little bit for me. I can't
Yeah,
tell.
for me, it's still counting down because it says we're going live an hour later. So I'm not sure if that's part of it.
Weird. Oh, it did change the time. Oh, so we might not even be live. Hold on. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. That is really weird.
Yeah, I think if you change the time back to the current hour, then it should maybe. Oh, no. Yeah.
It's not a Luke stream if there's not some sort of technical issue. Can I change the time now that we're actually doing it though? Is that gonna work? Where does it let me change it?
Probably.
Details. I don't know, fam. Okay, well, I see it now. It just popped up for me. I guess we'll wait a second. I'll have Jacob trim off the beginning, the,
Oh
the
yeah.
stuttering
Yeah.
bits.
No,
But I think.
Oh yeah, the first minute is us. Yeah, but we are live now.
People are gonna come into the VOD and be like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah.
They're just like, "Is it working? Is it working or not?" Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Not as smooth an intro as we normally would do because I accidentally set the time, I guess, for 12. I thought I set it for 11, but
because did your time change?
it did.
Like
You know what it is?
Maybe.
I made the event on my laptop, which I have not opened since before the time change. So I bet that like internal clock is still from the previous time. So when I set it to 11, it thought it was 12. Okay. Well, I know what happened now. Here we are.
Yeah.
We did it. Kinomansky, Jordan, did you have a date with the physical copy of Stellar Blade? Dude, that was one of the most outrageous things I've ever seen. But yeah, we got a good number of things to go through. We're kind of headed into a mad rush at the end of March because a lot of companies have the end of their fiscal year at the end of March. So if you have a game that's like kind of close or you just need to get some numbers boosted, shove it out at the end of May. And so we're about to get a few releases, if not more, all stacking up around the same time. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, on one hand, I get it to beef up your full year results, but on the other hand, I really think Dragon's Dogma is gonna like eat a lot of the room, or take up like a lot of the room, like other games like Rise of the Ronin. I think it's gonna be a hard time. Getting people on PS5. Like people have to choose that they will choose. So I think like delaying it till April when there's nothing happening apart from a Stellar Blade would have been way smarter. Also for, like you mentioned before we went live, Alone in the Dark, I completely forgot about that game.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, the one thing with Alone in the Dark, I saw on Reddit, somebody was reporting that it's expected to be between 6 and 10 hours long for $60. I think the original was about 8 hours if you went crazy with it. So
which is
like
nice. Like it's not nice to like stay very long alone in the dark.
Especially for horror games. Oh, that's good. That's good. See what you did there. But yeah, I think everything's with the amount of games that we're getting, like 2 huge ones and a smaller one in the span of like 2 days.
Princess Peach.
And Princess Peach. I think probably there's going to be one winner. I agree. I think it's Dragon's Dogma. My gut feeling for months has been that Dragon's Dogma is going to start off good, like solid, but not overwhelming. And I think word of mouth, TikTok clips, YouTube shorts and stuff of people fighting ogres and stuff are going to go viral and people are going to go pick it up.
Like because there are a lot of like, did you see this moments we already saw in like early footage, I think from the previews that happened earlier this month, where someone like was just holding on to a griffin, and then if you just hold on for too long, the griffin will go back to their nest. So you're like fly over the whole map, or where if you don't do like a quest immediately, then the NPC that you are looking for might die. So there's some like timing involved as well, which is very interesting. So I think that game will just do very cool things that we haven't seen that often in these types of games.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see it and see what people think of it. Rise of the Ronin, I think the niche that likes that type of game and Team Ninja stuff, I think they're gonna gobble it up. But my gut has been for a long time, and I've gotten flack because I made live stream clips of it and stuff. my gut has been that performance is going to be kind of the albatross around that game's neck. I've also said similar things about Dragon's Dogma 2, so we'll see how that turns out, because some of the clips they've dropped of that have been in like the 24, 25 FPS range, which is rough when that's like the best you can show, but time will tell. But with Rise of the Ronin, we have someone in our midst who has tried it and might be able to offer some insight. Now, I've not checked out any like nitty gritty details of the game or the previews. That we watched one from IGN, I believe, that was just kind of like a broad overview, nothing too special, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts because you tend to go into the specifics and like dig in there. So what did you think of it when you tried it?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, I played like 5 hours. There's like a cutoff point in the game, and beyond that, I cannot talk about it. So I do have the full game already, but I can only talk about the first few hours. So the first 5 hours, and I'm kind of in the sort of Japanese mood with the Shogun TV show that I've watched only one episode of, but it's just kind of cool to go from that TV show into Rise of the Ronin. The timing or like the setting is kind of different, but still the whole sort of thing where the sort of Western, like the Americans, are getting to Japan with huge ships. That kind of overlaps, so it's kind of cool to see different takes on that. And so far, I or like in those 5 hours, I've been really really happy with the combat so far. If you played the other Team Ninja, or I said Ninja, but how do you pronounce it? It's like Ninja. I had some people in the comments talking about that.
I always ask like when we hop off stream, because the American way of saying it is just ninja. We just go ninja. We just say exactly how it's spelled. I don't know if it's probably not the right way to say it. It's like that TikTok that went semi-viral the other day when people were like, Americans, it's croissant, not croissant. I'm like, I don't. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Like it's probably not enchilada, but that's how we say it. So I'm just gonna say it that way.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't think you're wrong necessarily. Well, maybe you are. Yeah. I don't know.
But you always get comments about that sort of stuff. But I want to do it right. But either way, they are of course known for Ninja Gaiden, the Neo games more recently, and yeah, those games have always had very very solid combat. Wolong, of course, is their most recent release, and that totally happens in this, or is like similar in this game as well. There are a lot of weapon types that you find, and every time you find a new one, you're like, whoa, this one feels completely different. And that was kind of like one of the big questions, like the difficulty, because those games like Neo and Wolong as well have been more in the Souls-like category and can be pretty punishing. You really see that for this game, that Sony is publishing and probably like put a lot of money behind, that they really wanted to make it more accessible for a broader audience. So there are 3 difficulty settings, basically easy, normal, and hard. You can change at any time, and even if you die like a couple of times, it will have that GTA-like, or like Rockstar does it, for example, other games of course as well, where it's like, you suck, you want to turn down the difficulty. So Rise of the Ronin has that as well, and the difference between easy and normal is pretty big. You can even tweak like small things as well, so you can really, if you struggle at a boss, you can tweak that. So far though, it has been fine. Like they add some really interesting mechanics to it that make the game overall less fun. So yeah, a bit easier. For example, if you kill an enemy, you get money, and when you die, you don't lose that money. Instead, you have karma as well, and that is used to get a skill point if you reach a certain threshold. So it's kind of similar to Jedi Survivor, for example. When you die, you do have to get that. You have a chance to get that karma back. So then you have to go to an enemy that killed you, but you don't have to kill that enemy. You can just assassinate them, then you will get it back, or just perform a finisher mid-combat and then run away. So it's pretty easy to get your lost currency back, which is nice. There are multiple playable characters, which was kind of surprising for me, and they did not really show that in the trailers. So you start out as like a twin, and there's like a character creator for both characters. It's kind of Alexio's Cassandra in a way, because at one point you only pick one of the two, and the other one will still be in the world and look like the person you created. I don't want to go too much into the story, but how they kind of use that, it's like early on in the game you can switch between the two. So obviously one of the big things with these Souls-like games is that every sort of enemy you encounter can be very challenging. But if they have to divide their attention, you can create openings because they turn their back on you while fighting, your AI party member. And later on in the game, still in those 5 hours, you already unlock other AI companions. So you're basically running sort of main story missions, usually with a party of 3, and then you can switch between them. They all have different weapons, so that really makes it easier. If you die, you will switch to another party member, or if a party member dies, you can just revive them at the cost of 1 health potion. So yeah, it's totally like less. It's totally easier than those other games. But I do have to say that it is still a Souls-like, and I think the trailers never really showed that, but it's really about those 1v1 or 3v1 in this game often, fights where you're battling. Even like the small enemies can be a challenge, but at the end of the mission, you're always fighting this huge boss, where you have to learn to parry, find the best weapon abilities. So yeah, you have to learn the moves. It's really what you see in those types of games. But you can save everywhere, so there are sort of bonfires, but it's all just way more accessible, which is kind of nice. But yeah, the thing that you talked about, the performance and sort of the whole graphical side of it, it feels dated in every way. It's like the city streets are super empty. There are only like 4 people on the street at one time in the sort of early city you go to. If you just stand still and look at the environment, you're like, is this like a I always kind of think, because a lot of people, it's like a very internet commenty thing to say, where whoa, I didn't know they were still making PS3 games. And usually I'm like, it's not that bad, but in this game it's really that bad. Like I played through Syndicate very recently, and that game is it's like stunning still. And it's really, you see that this is their first big attempt at like an open world. And if they do it like this, then you can better not do it at all. Like it kind of hurts the
You can tell it's their
setting.
first attempt. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of, we talked about this before in the podcast as well, where it's really, they put the PlayStation Studios logo on this game, and if you look at the box art, you think, oh, it's a Ghost of Tsushima style game, but that game came out 4 years ago and looks 10 times better than this game. So I have not run into a lot of like frame drop issues in the 5 hours. So I'm not, I hope that it just stays, because you do have the performance mode and the quality mode. I don't know why you would play in quality mode, because then you play in 30 FPS and the game still doesn't look great.
The game
So
still looks bad.
it's like, what am I giving up here? So it's I hope that, I don't know. I have a full review. I can like talk more about it on March 21st. So the day the game comes out, or the day before the game comes out. So there's way more to say about it. There are some interesting features, like there's a lot of loot, which was also in some of the previous games they made. And you have like 2,000 slots. So that's kind of nice. You never run into inventory issues. While I got like 200 items in my first 5 hours, which kind of crazy. There's this open world that has very typical things like an altar, you pray, and then you get a skill point. There are mini games you can do, like with the glider, you have to go through not rings, but like other score things, and then get a better score, get some rewards from that. If you played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's very similar to those mini games. And you have a lot of bandit camps, and the core of this game is the combat, which is so far really, really enjoyable. But I still hope after these 5 hours that there are some surprises left. Like, I'm kind of afraid that I've already seen everything the game has to offer, and it will just be more of that. Um, yeah, and the setting is so cool, but then to see the sort of lifeless streets, and the story has also not really grabbed me. The characters are okay. It's like very limited dialogue. Your main character does talk here and there, which is already a big thing in the Team Ninja games, but yeah, it's still very limited. So it feel always with these types of games, it feels like you're watching someone else's story. Like there's one samurai who talks a lot, so it feels like you're intruding his sort of game. So
You're an
it's
NPC in there.
yeah, you're an NPC in his sort of adventure, and um, I don't know, man. I hope it gets better after this point, because I want a game like this so badly. Like I just love this setting, and it would be like a very nice, sort of like we will get Red and we will get Ghost of Tsushima 2, but that will be still a while. So having already something to lose yourself in to is nice. So far though, yeah, I kind of like mixed on it. I hope it gets better. The combat at least is really great, but again, how long will that? Yeah, will that keep the game interesting for?
I mean, it just reminds me of Wolong,
tens
but
of
it
hours?
sounds like it has a lot of the problems of Wolong, which are like graphical fidelity and things, and a lot of the same strengths, really robust combat systems and things like that. But you know, we've brought it up on stream before. Whenever as a studio you introduce a new thing that you're trying to do, whether it's an open world, you know, like Naughty Dog ran into this in The Last of Us Part 2 when they added that big Seattle section. When you add a big level, you are going to be judged and graded against other big levels or big open worlds and things, because you're now putting yourself into that category. Same with like Starfield adding in like this idea that there's 1,000 planets you can explore. Okay, well, we're going to compare you to other games that do similar things and grade you against those. Whether you think that's fair or not, you put yourself into that category to be judged. And it sounds like it's basically Wolong in a different setting. That's like some more approachable accessibility things for quality of life improvements for the average player, difficulty options, things like that. But they've now tried to do this open world thing, and they didn't do a very like particularly good job. And so now they're going to be judged against other open world games, especially other open world games from PlayStation in similar settings, at least visually and thematically, like Ghost of Tsushima. And it's going to look really rough by contrast. And I think I'm interested to see the long-term ramifications, because maybe nobody cares that much about the graphics and it just, you know, it comes out, it moves on, everybody forgets about it in the 6 months. Or this could be the start of maybe some negative impressions people have of PlayStation Studios published games, and maybe they just decide, we probably shouldn't put our logo on just about everything. Rockstar ran into a similar thing, because back in like 2011, for example, they were publishing games like LA Noire, and you know, I think they published
But
Max
that was made
Payne,
by a
right?
Rockstar team, though.
It was
Right?
Team
They called
Bondi
themselves.
or Team Bondi.
Yeah.
Um,
Did they?
I don't think they were
Okay.
officially Rockstar. They shut down later, but
Yeah.
they were published by Rockstar, and you know, they had similar play style, similar vibes, similar UI. All of that stuff was very, very similar. But I think Rockstar eventually realized, hey, when we put our name on something, people have certain expectations. And every time we publish something that we didn't directly create, if it falters, it reflects really negatively on us. So let's just publish it under something else. And PlayStation, like, we all know why they put their name on this game, because they don't have any big games this year for themselves. They have third-party games they're publishing and partnering with on marketing and stuff, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Rise of the Ronin, but they don't have anything big themselves to sell as like the PlayStation game this year. So they're trying to just put their logo on this, and maybe that ends up not being an issue, or maybe it's a blunder.
And I mean, on paper, this sounds like a match made in heaven, right? Because if you look at their Metacritics, the Team Nia games are pretty well regarded. I think even Wolong sits at like an early or like a low 80s, I think, right? So you would think giving them like it's 80 on a Metacritic. So you would think that, yeah, giving them more resources and making it more in the style of game that the Sony studios are known for really helps. But so far, it really feels like, because I haven't even talked about the structure. It feels kind of like two games in one, because you do have those open world sections that I talked about where you can freely, like, there are some side quests, like it's very typical stuff. But then every main mission has been talk to this NPC in the open world and then go to this instanced mission where you have like a screen where you can select your allies and stuff. There's also where you can play co-op. I was not able to try that yet, but it's really weirdly put together. So yeah, basically have a loading screen between every main mission instead of it existing in the open world like we see for many open world games. While and that is very typical to the games they previously made. So it got they're still doing these because these main missions are really in contained areas that you cannot leave, and and apart from that you're in this open world. So they are still holding on to what they know, but that really makes it feel less connected as a whole.
Yeah.
So
No, that's interesting. It's always fascinating to me when a studio tries to do something kind of fresh and different, because on the one hand you're like, awesome, I'm glad you're experimenting, trying different things, but you also tend to see holdouts and holdovers from their previous games kind of seeping in various ways, because like Team Ninja games are always going to feel like Team Ninja games, and they're going to share some of the DNA, and some of that stuff's going to seep over and stuff. And so to hear that they're structuring main story missions in the same way as like in the Neo games, even though now it's in an open world, is just kind of funny. And it shows that it's not as easy as just, well, let's just do that, but make it open world. It makes games like Elden Ring that do it really well, which was their first attempt at like a huge fully open world, all the more impressive, because you realize it's not that easy to just like change format entirely.
I mean, I think you heard it before this game. It was like, is this their Elden Ring moment or something? But yeah, it makes Elden Ring look way more impressive with what they did, and Zelda as well, because they also nailed the open world with Breath of the Wild. So it's not for everyone, and it kind of shows you like maybe it's okay to not have an open world in every game, like if it hurts the game more, because I think in Wolong and Neo games, it's really focused on this, these very structured levels. It's really, you're constantly doing what the game does best, which is the combat. And now I've been like riding after like an NPC to like a graveyard. Like it cost me like 5 minutes to get there, and you're like talking, and the dialogue is not that great. It's like the typical on horseback conversation, which is not on the same level as you're used to. And then you get to this more contained location where you fight enemies, and that's then kind of fun. So but we will see. I have to play more. Again, the game has some really cool ideas. There's like a wanted system as well, so sometimes you will see other Ronins. I think they're based on other people's character that will just walk around, and then you can, if you, for example, start hitting innocent NPCs around them, they will be like, what the heck are you doing? And then they will come after you. So there's a sort of wanted system, or you can attack them on the street as well. So then you have this kind of Ronin versus Ronin battle, and get some loot from that. So again, all the weapons feel very different. There have been some really cool, huge katanas, great swords, guns are in the game as well. The finishers are really, really brutal. I did turn down the blood, and always with these types of games, it's kind of hard to edit them for YouTube because they don't like all the bloody finishers. So I put them later on in the video. But yeah, so there are totally some things to love. But I also, for example, there are cats in this game, and
that's really been in a lot of the marketing stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It feels really like a bullet point at this point, because there has also been this Twitter account, "Can you pet the cat?" And I remember like earlier when open world games kind of got bigger and the photo mode became more of a thing, then it was always cool. Oh, there are cats, and sometimes you could not interact with them, and then that became a thing. But it really feels like Sony came to them and is like, yeah, the cats or the animals worked really well in Ghost of Tsushima. Do something like that as well. And they took it to the next level because they are collectibles. Basically, petting a cat gives you like a +1 cat, and they can exchange that for rewards. So the more
Huh.
cats you find, the more rewards you get.
I mean,
And
at least it's
like
more than just like a one-off animation of petting a cat, which is what I thought it was going
I
to be.
guess, but it's like the same animation for every cat I found so far, right? And it's like they made like a small puzzle because you do see the icon on the map, and then you have to look around. Oh, the cat is on the roof. Oh, I have to go. It's like I don't know. And then you have a dog as well that you can pet. I wish they would go like try something different, or like at least give it their own twist instead of, hey, there have to be animals here because
Yeah,
people
almost like
enjoy
it's
that or
it's
something.
almost like pandering to be like, well, we have animals, so that makes our game
Yeah.
like +1, right? You know?
And that's what I liked about Ghost of Tsushima with the foxes that you had to follow and stuff. That was like a cool implementation of the animals in that game.
Yeah.
And now it just feels like, oh, that cat that you normally see walking around and can pick up the pet. Now you have to actually look for them instead of them being like an optional, very optional or like world building thing.
Yeah, it's I don't know. My expectation for Rise of the Ronin, which is why I've been very clear with everybody, like it seems like every creator has sort of had to pick their battles for the end of March. So it's like, are you going to focus on Alone in the Dark, Rise of the Ronin, or Dragon's Dogma? I
Who's gonna
chose.
focus on Alone in the
I haven't seen anyone, but somebody maybe will.
Okay. Yeah.
So like I've chosen to go with Dragon's Dogma 2 because I just expect that to be a game I'll enjoy more, and I expect it to probably be the better of the game, and more people are going to be interested in it. And my expectation has been that Rise of the Ronin will be just like every other Team Ninja game from the last 5 years or 10 years or whatever it's been. And that is to land at maybe like high 70s, low 80s, be pretty good at what it's doing, but not exceptional at much of anything. And from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I'm hearing from you, your first 5 hours at least would suggest that that's kind of the case. Does it do
Yeah.
anything like exceptionally well that you can think of, or is it all kind of just middle of the road?
Again, like I think the bandit camps have been very exciting so far, and again, I hope they tweak that a bit and make it like kind of different, because that's always in the first few hours. Everything that you're doing for the first time is interesting, and we with the open world games have to see how that evolves. But what is really cool about the bandit camps here is that you have like they say, okay, you have 8 enemies in total, and 4 of them are formidable foes. So basically mini bosses that won't go down quickly, and they all have a different weapon, use different moves. So you can like stealth is pretty big in this game, which is also really cool. So regular enemies can be killed with one assassination if you're like on a similar level. So you can kind of go about that as well. If you're kind of a stealth player, you can use a ranged weapon to instantly kill with a headshot these enemies as well. But then inside the camp, when all those regular enemies are dead, you have these pretty tough boss battles. Usually in other open world games like Ghost, but also the Assassin's Creed games, there's maybe one leader or something, but it's nothing too interesting, and you've probably battled it before. But so far, there have been like 4 interesting bosses that I had to really kind of learn to fight. Like one had a big shield, the other one had a small katana or like a dual katana. So inside the bandit camp, you have way more of a challenge, and it's way cooler to kind of figure out how you're gonna take these guys out. Versus other bandit camps that I've seen in other games. So I would say that is kind of cool.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, have they said how long the game is? Do we
I don't
know?
know.
Because if you are saying that after 5 hours you're hoping that it swaps up and and gets shaken up, I'm like, I don't know, man. Let's
I think
see.
they did not say anything. But these
Yeah.
games, like from Team Ninja, have been pretty large, right?
I think they've mostly sat. I mean, I guess we could look up Wo Long um that length. Let's see. It's 26 hours according to How Long to Beat, 35 for main and side. So if you're guessing similar length, then probably 25 to 30 is safe to say. Maybe the open world, it makes it even more bloated or bigger just
Yeah.
with traveling. So maybe, more like 30 to 35. But I guess, you're going to find out. I don't know if I'll be playing it depending on Dragon's Dogma. But I mean, at this point, is it something? I don't know how to ask it. After 5 hours, do you feel like this is going to be referenced in 6 months, or do you think it's going to be kind of forgotten?
Again, it really depends on it, because I think the trailers so far have shown some pretty cinematic moments, and the first hour is really cool. There are some really, yeah, there are quite some cutscenes, and yeah, they set up the story pretty well. But in the hours afterwards, they have not done anything with that yet. So there are again some cool scenes in trailers they showed that I did not reach yet. So I hope these, because that's what I'm kind of missing at this point. I think this time this setting had some really great cinematic moments, and if they can, yeah, like a huge battle and all that sort of stuff, like we did see that in the I think one of the PlayStation State of Play trailers, like on a horseback and you're fighting. Like I have not reached those points yet. I do need to see more of that to be really like, whoa, this is awesome. You have to play it. And I hope they switch up the mission structure a bit instead of having these instanced missions all the time. So right now, I would say I hope if it stays like this, it's like a, if you really want that samurai fix before the other big games that are coming, then sure, you're probably, yeah, you're gonna get that, I think, here. But I don't think it's gonna be like a must play that we will remember in a few months, which is similar to Wolong, even though it got like big Metacritic scores. I think the Neo games hadn't made a bigger mark, and I don't see this being on that level.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like, I don't know, like you said at the top, some people were saying, is this going to be their Elden Ring moment? And I think Elden Ring, every time people found out more about it, people got their hands on it, people tried it and were able to just get a taste, they fell in love with it more and more and were more and more impressed by it. And it seems like with this game, the more people get exposed to it, the less excited they are, which is usually a pretty good indicator, because most great games also show well and also preview well. There are, of course, occasional exceptions, and it's like the game was really good, but this demo just did a terrible job of showcasing it, right? There are cases like that, but usually if a game previews poorly, it's because it's just not a
Yeah,
great game.
and we've seen that with Dragon's Dogma, like the complete opposite, where people first were like, "Oh, I did not play the first game, so I'm not really going to pay attention." And then more gameplay started to hit, and they're like, "Whoa, this actually looks cool." And then the previews, I think, earlier this month really put kind of a stamp on it. Like, hey, you should, yeah, they are doing some very interesting stuff. And of course, the sort of pawns and AI system they got in that game is kind of revolutionary from the sounds of it. So I think more and more people are going to, yeah, focus on that. Where I think Rise of the Ronin so far has been, the first trailer looked amazing, like the setting is really cool, and then we kind of realized what type of game it was, and then we kind of got put back on the ground in terms of like expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I will report back next week. Depends on when we do the podcast. I can talk about it on Thursday.
Yeah.
And then let you know, and we'll of course have a full review on my channel as well. So
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I'm hopeful that it just starts taking off, and maybe hours 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and onward are just like, these are the greatest moments of my life, and it just reinvents everybody as a person. I hope it's that good. My guess would be if after 5 hours it's like,
Yeah.
it's probably more.
Yeah, but if like the combat, I do feel the combat does right now have more depth than a Ghost of Tsushima because you have a lot of different weapons. So I can see it being a fact where, yeah, Ghost did a lot of other things really well, but the combat in Rise is better or something like that. So that there are like some things that you can compare it to that Rise does better, but we will see.
Yeah. It's gonna be really, really interesting. So buckle in, everybody. We're keeping an eye
And if
on
the other
it.
people in the chat have some questions, so we can like quickly go over them. Again, I'm only like I can only talk about the first 5 hours. So.
Yeah. Ron the Dawn. I misread your question at first. I read it as, I wonder how this game would have done if it didn't exist. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. But I realize now, if GOT, if Ghost of Tsushima didn't exist. Well,
Oh yeah.
my thought is just like with Baldur's Gate 3, when that game came out, everybody was like, it's unfair. Well, devs were like, it's unfair to hold our games to that same standard because that game's so exceptionally great in the respects of like RPG mechanics and stuff like that. But the thing is, when a game comes out, it will raise the bar for its peers. So games in similar, genres trying to do similar things, whether you like it or not. And for Ghost of Tsushima, it came out like 4 years ago, and it raised the bar for these sort of open world, especially games like with heavy Japanese influences in these settings. That's what people think of when they think of an open world game based around samurai or ninja. Like, that's kind of what people expect in terms of quality, presentation, and the like. And so when you come out 4 years later, a console generation later, technically, and you seemingly haven't even reached the same level in many respects as that game from 4 years ago, it's really hard to argue that you're anywhere close in terms of quality,
But I think Ghost made this game better because you do see some similarities, or I would not be surprised if there was this sort of meeting between the two teams where they were like, hey, what can we learn from Ghost of Tsushima? Sucker Punch share some things, and I'm sure they shared some things. So I think it only made Rise of the Ronin better.
Yeah. Kind of informed it. James Norman on YouTube became a member, just re-upped his membership for 6 months. Oh, baby. Jor, do you know if Sais, S-A-I-S, are in the game like Raphael? I want to make some TMNT fun with my friends.
Again, there are some really cool weapons. One of them is like the sort of the chain blades from God of War.
Oh, Blades of Chaos.
Blades of Chaos. So there's like a similar weapon like that in the game, which is really cool. But I have not seen those those weapons that Raphael's using in the game yet. So,
but maybe.
But again, there are hopefully later on. Right now I've seen huge swords, but also big katanas, like a regular katana.
Have you fired the guns? What are the guns like?
Oh yeah, it's you have like a rifle, you have a revolver, you have a bow, and yeah, they're pretty nice. You also get your ammo back every time you basically go to one of the bonfires, which are like banners in this game. So yeah, shooting is not as, oh, you have no ammo, you have to buy it. You can use your ranged weapon pretty often. And of course, it's not as OP as you would think. Like higher level enemies or like mini bosses will, deflect the bullets if you shot them once. So you can't really use it in boss fights. But it is nice in particular to take out enemies that stand like on a watchtower or something. So with one headshot, you can mostly insta-kill them. And it's a pretty cool animation. You shoot, and they kind of reload the gun with like a sort of you spin them around and then you reload them, and they can continue shooting until your ammo is gone. So it's a pretty fun system. And you also have that we already saw in the trailers, the bayonet, so which like a spear but also a gun. So that's kind of cool. So you can
I mean, I also have to ask, because in the trailers that we've gotten, they've showcased a lot and focused a lot on the glider. And to me, every time the glider shoots up and you like propel up and you open it up, it looks awesome. And then it goes to a crawl and you basically move around at what looks like jogging speed, but you don't really glide through the air that fast. Is it like in the game, can you maybe level that up, or can you glide faster than they've shown, or does it glide pretty slowly?
So very early on, you meet one of the who's actually a historical figure. I can't remember the name. I think it was also in my video, but who is like an inventor and also has an upgrade for the glider. I did not unlock that yet, but I do feel that makes it a bit more useful. So there are upgrades for it, but I, to be honest, rarely use it. So you get it at one point, and then you kind of they kind of made this moment for it. So then you jump off, and then you use it, and you get to the first city. But after that, I found the horse is way faster. So, and there's really no there's it's like pretty horizontal. Like there are not a lot of mountains or anything that you have to jump off of. So I have not really found the use for the glider that much. There is, you can like assassinate, like use the glider and then immediately assassinate an enemy. So it works pretty fluid. Like there are no restrictions. If you just jump off a higher point, you can immediately trigger it. But it's just not as like I never really found a great use for it. Also because if you fight raged enemies, you will become an easy target. So I'm just using the horse mostly to get from point A to point B.
I mean, perhaps the most important question coming from Norcat, how long does it take to unlock the Master Sword?
First 5 hours, I did not see it yet.
I did not find it. Okay. So
I mean, I know in like Tears of the Kingdom, you can get the Hyrule Shield very early on, but
yeah, not in the Rise of the Ronin. The Master Sword is strangely difficult to
shield. Find. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have any other closing thoughts before we move on? Anything else you want to say about Rise of the Ronin?
I would like, I think the previews have also been like pretty I would just wait for the full reviews if you already have this pre-ordered. Like I'm just not convinced yet that it will be worth the full price. So like the reviews will drop if you're from the US, or like you will still have time to pre-order if the reviews turn out to be great. I've now played 5 hours, and I'm just not 100% sure that it will end up being what we all wanted it to be after watching the trailer. So,
and you're not alone.
No need to pre-order. Yeah,
you're not alone. I know IGN was like probably a little bit more positive than negative. Skill Up, I think people were saying that he had generally negative things to say. So, we'll see. We'll
yeah.
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, we will find out next week. But overall, also the fact that it's like launching the same day as Dragon's Dogma, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
I think they thought, or PlayStation probably thought, well, we're PlayStation. We can take on Capcom, and if we put the PlayStation Studios logo on it, yeah, we saw how well Ghost of Tsushima did, but I think it's going to get overshadowed pretty hard, especially 100%. If reviews are more in like the 7 out of 10 range.
Yeah, and then Dragon's Dogma might be like high 80s or something.
Yeah, I agree. So, with that, shifting gears a little bit. One of the interesting things that happened this past week were some revelations about something that no longer exists, but that nonetheless interested a fair number of people, and that is Spider-Man: The Great Web. What is this, Mr. Joe Raptor? What is Spider-Man?
I mean, you already reacted to the trailer. I saw you had some I was like surprised that you showed the trailer in your video.
Yeah, I got that BDE. I'm gonna be real. We just kind of go for it. I don't know. My policy with leaks is just, if it's for a project that's still coming out and the leaks are going to affect your opinion of it, especially negatively, like the Wolverine leaks, for example.
Oh yeah.
I'm not gonna show that or do that. It's not my place to like try and make a game look bad because something leaked years ahead of when it was ready. But when a game is canceled, to me it's more like lost media or found footage. It's more like trying to preserve it for posterity's sake, and we can at least appreciate it even though it'll never see the light of day. So for me, it's more an attempt to appreciate something that we're never going to get, or at least we're not going to get this version of it. And
Yeah.
I mean, basically what it is for anybody listening or that has not seen that is just simply that it was a pretty polished, pretty late, it seemed, in development multiplayer offering.
I
from
don't agree with
Spider-Man.
that, by the way.
Well, the
I saw
trailer
some
at
people
least
say,
looked really solid, which I think is
yeah.
what most people are pointing to. But who knows when it would have actually like been targeting release? Who knows? Or it certainly wasn't like feature complete or anything. But it looked, from the trailers and the vertical slice, which was reportedly done, it looked like they had a pretty clear concept, at least, for what this was going to be. It was going to pit 5 players against the Sinister Six in New York City. It was going to feature everybody's favorite mechanic that is straight out of Fortnite and Marvel, which is the multiverse model, or Marvel is what I meant, which was supposedly busted out by the Scarlet Witch, and there would have been character customization options, so you could do all sorts of different like outfits and stuff, which was shown off in the trailer. And the basic premise was that you're in New York City with 4 of your friends and you fight the Sinister Six. Pretty straightforward, doesn't seem that outrageous.
There were some other activities as well. So a whole presentation for the game had leaked as well, which was kind of interesting. And it's overall kind of interesting how they've been handling these leaks, because everything is still online. Like usually, like Warner Bros would be would have like an army of people that would claim all the footage. So it slowly died out. But I don't know why. But Insomniac is like, we lost this battle. Here, have a look at all our stuff.
Yeah. I think it's probably that they just, like I mentioned earlier, they want people to, at least somebody to enjoy in some way the work that they put into this. Because this trailer represents many people working for months and months and months and months. And for it to get canceled, it just is never seen usually. It just goes into a vault. But in this case, at least people can look at it. And the general reaction on social media is people being like, this was canceled? Are you crazy? I mean, my perspective on it is that I just don't know how much, like how this would work as a live service game.
Yeah.
I think people, even Spider-Man 2, like people were starting to complain that the game was feeling really stale by the end of its pretty short runtime. People felt that the combat and the actual game mechanics weren't that updated from Miles Morales or Spider-Man on PS4. So people were like, it's starting to feel a little stale. Like it's awesome, but there's only so much swinging and punching you can do before it just starts to feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is what you're doing. And I don't know how, or I don't know if just adding co-op all of a sudden makes it fun for hundreds of hours. And I personally don't think it would. Like if this were out and I had the option of doing this with my friends or Helldivers, I'd probably go into Helldivers personally.
That's kind of the I think there are 2 ways to look at it. One, people are saying, oh, why was this canceled? And then I don't think you really understand what this was. But I do get that the idea of swinging around New York with friends and doing crimes together and all that sort of stuff could be a ton of fun. But then it just has to be like a Ghost of Tsushima Legends type mode, right? That you finish, that you can, beat and then be done with it. But that just does not seem to be the way Sony wants to go for these projects. But to give some more info, because I watched the presentation, so they would have like great web raids where you would battle like huge Mysterio like bosses, or like a Venom that was like larger than life. So these would be like sort of the bigger challenging or the more challenging encounters. You would just have your regular neighborhood rescues, the regular crimes you can do, side gigs, so side quests, but also PvP. And one of them would be the skill challenges. So basically, hey, there's a point in New York. You both start at this point. Who gets there the fastest? And I think that would be pretty fun. To have like sort of activities like that. But you really see where it kind of went wrong, I think, or where, and that's kind of sad also with The Last of Us multiplayer. Like the sort of factions multiplayer they did was really great because it did not want to be the next big live service game that is gonna bring $1 billion to Sony. No, it was just a fun mode you can play with friends. But also here, they were really talking about a live service model. So in the presentation, they were first like, okay, how can we position this? Are we going to make it DLC for Spider-Man 2 or just include it for everyone who owns Spider-Man 2? And then they were looking at, hey, but actually going for a standalone premium product or a free-to-play product is actually has a higher opportunity to get more people in. But they were really comparing this to, they needed to have Apex level success for this to work, or half of Fortnite is what they kind of were looking at in terms of the revenue they wanted to get from this. And that's really where I think that's kind of crazy, because their plan for the post-launch was like a season of 90 days, averaging 5 to 10 hours of new content per season. You finish that in a weekend, and then it's like waiting again. And that's, of course, with these PvE games, it's just super hard. And especially if it's not like a Destiny, which is very loot heavy, very RPG heavy. Of course, shooting has been one of the best ways to interact with a game. I think, that works. But yeah, like you said, beating up bad guys for years and years and years with probably very limited skill options. Like, how will my Spider-Man be different from yours?
Yeah. And it just fundamentally, like, people can, if you're into looter shooters, like cranking those numbers up to the point where they're just outrageous can start to feel kind of cool. And especially if you do sort of an exponential scale of difficulty. So, level 5 enemies have 500 health, but level 6 enemies have 1,000 health, and level 7 enemies have 2,000 health. And all of a sudden it's exponentially more difficult. So you need exponentially better gear. And so you start to really grind that out. That is something that's been established in the looter shooter genre that some people really, really enjoy. But emphasis on some people. The people that really like that stuff, like min-maxing the numbers and finding that loot, they almost always already have a game that they have poured months and months, years and years into. And it seems like these executives just imagine that, well, if Destiny has however many millions of players and we release this, then we'll get that many players. And it's like, no, we're talking about a fixed pool of people. Maybe you get some new people who like Spider-Man and never realize they like those kinds of games, but that's relatively small. And the thing is, it's very difficult to pull people off of a game that they have spent years invested in. Like, the game that they're invested in kind of has to screw up majorly in order for them to feel like they're a free agent again to go find something else. And so you either get stupid lucky, timing it perfectly. That's kind of what Fortnite did. Is Fortnite came in early on in the battle royale craze, and PUBG was like this totally broken mess, always super buggy. And then Fortnite comes out and is relatively very polished. And all of a sudden people are like, okay, well, this is kind of better. And they go over there. And all of a sudden it builds this empire as years go by. But for this, I mean, does anybody really think that Spider-Man with 4 friends would take on Fortnite as it is today? Like, there's just no way. And so I can understand why they probably reevaluated it and were just like, it's just not going to be what we need it to be.
Yeah.
And like the stats you
And
pulled
what's it
up
gonna
in the doc,
cost? Like,
yeah, what's it gonna cost?
Everyone inside Insomniac is probably gonna work on this. Like 5 to 10 hours of new content per season. That is Miles Morales basically, and they want to release that every 90 days. Yeah, you can't do that with a small team. So.
Yeah, it's why, like, Naughty Dog, they reportedly told executives, if you want us to do this Last of Us Online thing, we will become a live service studio. That is all we're going to be able to do. And I think the executives at that point were like, well, but then we won't win Game of the Year. Okay, never mind. And everybody kind of reevaluated. But that's just the reality, is that you cannot just casually throw together a live service game that works. And what this story made me wonder is, presumably they were working on this multiplayer offering at the same time they were developing Spider-Man 2. And so I'm not sure how they broke down the budgetary or broke down the budget and how things were priced out in those leaks, if it was even that specific. But I wonder if they factored in the cost of the development of this and porting, or rather like adding all of these networking features to their engine. I wonder if they factored that into that $300 million cost to Spider-Man 2, and if potentially the development on this, which will never see the light of day, bloated the budget and the cost for Spider-Man 2, which could explain why it was so freaking expensive for a comparatively relatively small game. Which could
that's hard to say. They started, at least, or the presentation was from 2020, and this game was planned for 2026. When they had that trailer and stuff. So
so it's I always I think I'm more forgiving when I hear about cancellations, because it's like I said in our initial clip responding to this, like, there's a few known things in life: death, taxes, as somebody suggested, more taxes, and executives only caring about money. And in the case of this stuff, like, if there was a chance that this could turn a profit or at least break even, I think they would have let it go, let it run, and see what they could achieve with it. The fact that they canceled it, I think, same thing with The Last of Us Online, I think that betrays a lot. I think that tells you a lot, not just about what they thought this could actually deliver in terms of long-term sustainable player engagement and things like that and spending, but it also tells you a lot about their feelings of like confidence of the quality offering and players' responses. And I think maybe the lesson that Jim Ryan or maybe his replacements have learned in the last 6 months or a year is that players do not like it when they have to sacrifice the things they know they love for something they might like. And in the case of The Last of Us, it feels like Naughty Dog has done basically nothing for 4 years while they've been working on the online game and remasters and remakes. And everybody's like, by this time, like, Uncharted 4 launched in 2016, and then we got The Lost Legacy and The Last of Us Part 2, all in the time period that we've had a couple of remasters, or a remaster and a remake that was basically a remaster.
Yeah, with no sign of when the next game is gonna come out. Like, will it be the PS5 generation? Probably, but that's still like I'm thinking like 2028 for their new IP if they're working on that. So,
and like they're like, well, but you got a TV show, you got HBO, The Last of Us. Doesn't matter. Like, players don't like, gamers are like, oh, that's cool, but they still feel like their favorite studios have been sort of taken over by live service development. And
it had to happen at one point, though. Like, I'm happy that they are kind of realizing it now, so hopefully the PlayStation 6 generation will be better.
Yeah, no, but my conspiracy theory, I try to be very upfront when I'm theorizing and speculating, but my conspiracy theory, that is almost entirely unfounded, to be very clear, is that Jim Ryan was kind of welcomed to retire, because I think the CEO that took over, I think when he was promoted in, I believe, early 2023, he looked at, I think, the PlayStation business model and was like, something's off here. Like, your margins are shrinking, your costs are skyrocketing. What is going on here? And then our production is dropping. And so I think
how can you not have a game in 2024 when you put this much money into development? That's
exactly
crazy.
So I think he looked at it and he dug in, and he had his team look into Jim Ryan and everything, and he realized, dear God, you've greenlit 12 live service games. 4 of them are just not, like, they're either actively canceled or they're about to be canceled.
Or this one, I don't know if this one was included, but that would be 5 actually, which is crazy.
And like, he's probably looking at this and he's like, so your business model for this whole generation was to spend billions of dollars to hope to get one success that could just maybe make up all the difference and all the cost. No, we're not doing that. And I think Jim Ryan got some pressure to be like, you've been talking about wanting to spend more time with your family. Maybe that's best. Maybe you should do
We're gonna make you fly every day. So
Yeah.
you
Well,
have
and
to quit.
a lot of like the corporate stuff. I love that mug, by the way. A lot of the corporate stuff.
It's an incredible mug.
It's an incredible mug. A lot of corporate stuff. It's always like it's kind of like a bunch of bros where it's like, hey, dude, you need to leave, but I don't want to like ruin your career by announcing that you're fired or ruin your legacy. So why don't you just announce you're retiring and we'll just move on? And I think that that's what kind of happened with Jim Ryan. I think he was welcomed to retire, and that's why you're seeing such seemingly a huge pivot from Jim Ryan greenlighting all these live service games to right as he's on his way out, all of a sudden a bunch of these live service games are being canceled in the 6 months leading up to it. And a bunch of stuff like that is happening just because I think he screwed the pooch a little bit and got called out. And then he's like, okay, well, I'm going to leave before the consequences of my actions catch up to me. And
yeah, but it makes me more hopeful for the games that they still got going, because if the Horizon Online game or Concord did not work out, like Concord is kind of a similar situation to Deviation games from the Call of Duty Zombies veterans that made the studio. They announced in 2022 or 1 at Summer Game Fest that they were partnering with PlayStation to make like a PvE shooter for them. That studio is gone now. So Sony backed out. Twisted Metal, Last of Us Online, all cancelled. The London studio game. So Sony is not afraid to cancel stuff. But yeah, for some reason they're like, hey, this Horizon game, we got something cooking there. Concord, the burger in space.
yeah,
Gonna be great.
maybe. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, maybe they're just so far along that they're like, okay, the chance of this making some money is high enough that we can do that. Or it's going to be interesting. I think that Horizon really needs to get out the door, kind of like you mentioned in your tweet. I think it's got to get out the door soon, because if it goes head to head with Monster Hunter World or Wild, I think they're in a tough spot.
I looked at the LinkedIn for I think he thinks probably that I'm stalking him, because I'm looking at this LinkedIn from the game director on the Horizon Online project, where it says that he started working on it 6 plus 2 months or 6 years and 2 months ago, which is crazy. And he was responding to some people that sadly got let go from the layoffs at Guerrilla Games. And there someone said, good luck in the coming year. ... Why not years? Why year? So maybe, but Sony said we will not have a God of War Ragnarok or Spider-Man 2 before April. So I think the Horizon Online game counts, right?
It's gotta. I mean, in terms of budget, it's up there.
Probably. But maybe they know that it won't do the same numbers year 1 or something. I think we will see the game, and I'm really scared for that art style that is gonna backfire them.
Yeah, the moment people say, "Oh, so it's like Fortnite," even though that doesn't, even though it doesn't make sense to be like dismissive using that, when people throw that out, they're like, "Oh, so it's like you Fortnited the Horizon art style." Okay, immediately people are like, "Oh, gross."
And that's not the same audience. Like that's kind of that could be an issue. But I hope it's old. I hope they changed it. The leaked sort of build we saw did include these cartoony characters in the Horizon Zero Dawn world, so it was kind of a weird sight, but we will see, because it's
well,
I don't know why they would go for this.
I agree, and like here's the deal. Like Epic, they have, let's just say, a history. I think Among Us was the best example, where when they see something really successful,
oh my god,
they're able to just quickly, in the span of like a couple weeks, recreate it exactly. And because they have so many millions of players that already have skins, that already are invested in their ecosystem, that just starts taking off and doing super well. Like that game, I think it was last summer, that went viral, the like Only Up or Always Up or something, where you just climb the tower to the very, very top and try not to fall down, otherwise you fall all the way to the bottom. They did that. That game was like super viral. Every streamer was playing it. And then Fortnite just casually was like, okay, we have it now. And then all of these content creators just started making their own maps, and you could buy it with a creator code for $5. You could play Tim the Tatman's tower that he and his team made. And it's just like, I think for Horizon to be like, I mean, I'm sure the game's going to be huge, but if Fortnite wants to come out with like a Monster Hunter kind of ripoff in the Fortnite art style with their platform and everything, they probably are already doing it. Like,
There have been rumors about an open world Fortnite game for a really long time.
Yeah,
I think
it wouldn't shock me at all if they just were like, oh, that's cute, Sony. That's really cute. Anyway, we're doing it, and we have all the Disney IP available to us, and we're also going to do a Lego reskinned version. So if you want to play Lego Horizon, basically, you can do that too. I would not be shocked at all if they just casually did
that. Would be and that's why I maybe it's I think the only reason I can think of is because they want to make sure that it runs on more PCs, because if you saw the Forbidden West specs, that's pretty big for a game that you want a lot of people to play. So that's the only kind of reason I can see why they're going for this. Because otherwise it really feels like this boardroom. Yeah, we have to appeal to the younger generation. Let's go for this art style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's it feels, I think the reason people don't like it is because Fortnite has a very unique and very recognizable art style. And so whenever you see a live service game that you already feel like only exists because they're trying to milk their audiences, it feels super disingenuous to be like, yeah, this is just where the art took us, and this is just where we ended up. It's like, not really though. Like, let's be honest here. We know what this was. So
show the presentation.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how it develops. I'm hopeful for it. I would love another sort of Monster Hunter-esque game.
But like you said in your video as well, if Wilds comes out, like, why would people, because that game can eat hours away very easily, why would you then do that in an Horizon game that might be of similar time consuming? And it won't have all the learnings from all the Monster Hunter games before it. It does seem to include more of an open world, at least from the sort of job listings we saw. So I really hope they try to make it more a let's explore this Horizon open world together. I hope they don't have survival elements, but that's just me. That might make it like, I do think they know that they have to be kind of different, although the moment to moment let's hunt the Thunderjaw together will probably be pretty similar.
Yeah. I mean, and to be clear, we don't know a whole lot of details about this. We have seen like some leaks and some concept art and heard some rumblings, and so the impression is that it's basically Monster Hunter in the Horizon universe and stuff, with a more cartoony art style. And maybe that is just exactly what it is. Maybe it takes some more nods elsewhere. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what could really truly differentiate it, and I can't really think of much, because if you go after Fortnite, you're pretty much always going to lose, because Fortnite is so huge at this point, and their customers are so entrenched. I just don't think you really pull that
They're
off.
going to do a Paul World now. That my mind immediately went to that. They're going to do a character collector.
Yeah.
I mean, they already have to build elements and stuff.
Yeah. It's a layup. Like, it just makes perfect sense. They could honestly probably go to Nintendo and rub some shoulders. Like,
they probably don't want to. They want to keep their. I mean, they're fighting for that 30% that Apple takes.
That's true.
So they're probably. I mean, they can probably come up with a sheep that looks like the sheep from Pokemon, but slightly different.
Well, and the fact that Pal World's not been sued into oblivion yet, I think shows that Nintendo even knows. Like, Nintendo knows that they're not going to win that lawsuit, so they're probably.
They showed the raid boss today. Did you see it? It's
no.
They have like the first real update for the game coming. So there's like a raid boss coming to Pal World, and it looks like another Pokemon, but like an emo version.
Oh yeah, straight up, dude. That's so funny. But I mean, it's my wife Nikki is still playing it. She has like whatever 3-4 bases. She has, I don't even know how many dozens of hours into it. But I mean, she's like, mass manufacturing semiconductors. I didn't even realize you could do that in the game. Like, she's very, very deep in it. And even now, I mean, I think it's still getting tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of players. Pal World.
I think it's like at the 200 still, 100, 200. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, it
But I don't think they
goes.
can keep it up. I think Helldivers is really showing. I did not expect them to be this good at it, at the live service stuff. And you really see that Power World is kind of struggling because this looks like a raid boss, like one boss. People are going to beat that in an hour, and then they're wondering, okay, what's next, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I think with Pal World, it's not really a live service game. Like you can play with your friends, but it's not really built to be a live service game. It's built to just be like a survival game with co-op is basically what it is.
Yeah,
Helldivers, I agree. I don't think any of us expected them to dominate the way they have. And I mean, even now, they're still all-time peak was 21 days ago at 458,000 on Steam, but they have 347,000 in their 24-hour peak. And they still they're still introducing tons of new stuff. They still they introduced mechs, which are an all new thing in the game. They did some rebalancing. They have the
and
meta
I love how
story.
they sprinkle that in. Like some people accidentally got the mech already. I feel that was just like
Oh, I think so
purposely.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like stuff like that, where those are kind of like the old school Destiny days, where you also had, yeah, just news in the game that became like these big stories. I remember one of the like a new exotic or whatever was then only available through a certain way for a certain limited amount of time, or you had to do this nightmare strike and then go here. Like there were many things that were only available for a limited time and that everyone was talking about. That really did well, and I feel Helldivers is. I did not expect them to do it this well, and maybe they got the tips from Bungie because we know the game had been delayed. They wanted to reveal it a lot, like way that we had the leak trailer like in 2022, I think, and then a launch like early 2023. But then Bungie came in. Maybe they gave them some tips. I would not be surprised.
Maybe I mean I think the thing that has really been allowing it to just totally excel has been the memeability of it. Like it was on TikTok. There was a TikTok I saw where somebody took, because basically there was this broadcast from the automatons, and the automatons broadcast to players this message of like, let us win, or when you win, you'll destroy us. When we win the fight, we will return to our home and we will leave you be and award you that which you have not allowed us, which is to live peacefully alone. And it was like, oh, that's like, that hits deep. That's really intense. But then what's amazing about it is that like the comments, you would expect maybe they're like, oh wow, that's really sweet. That's almost sad. Like the automatons are just looking for peace and we won't give it to them. No, the comments are all like, yeah, well, sucks to suck. Sounds like treason to me. Like everybody's like, well, that's a lot of loud talking for someone within orbital strike range. You know, people just like didn't care at all. And so I think that the memeability of it has allowed it to just take on a life of its own. And that's something nobody could really expect. And it's been utterly hilarious to see people, you know, role play. I get recommended all those TikToks of the guys that get in the server and they're match made with everybody and they try to like role play. Like, oh yeah, I got to get back to my wife and my 7 kids. Oh, good for you, man. We'll protect you. Yeah, well, all 7 of them are gonna grow up to be Helldivers. They're like, hell yeah, brother. And like at the end of the mission, they all get killed, and he's like, okay, before I die, go back to my wife and make sweet love to her, raise my children into Helldivers. He's like, not a problem. Yeah, it's just great. It's for democracy. It's awesome.
I remember the first trailer for Helldivers too, and they already kind of course, went for the whole democracy thing, and it did not really hit. And then I was like, because I think we watched the trailer, we're like, is this Helldiver? What is this? And it's so cool that this is like the best way this could have gone for them. Which is kind of crazy.
It literally, I think you're right. I don't think it literally could not have gone better. I think this has just been a tremendous success. And as they still have so much runway left. They have said that there's tons of enemies that they still have not revealed to anybody. Players still have not seen a lot of it. They are doing these casual things like dropping in mechs. They introduced flying bugs out of nowhere, and then the CEO tweets out, he's like, bugs can't fly. And so everybody's like, wait, so it's not, but it's a different race. Is that what you're saying? It's a different species. So they're not bugs. They're like a different alien, and everybody's starting to lose their minds. And little stuff like that is just so captivating. And I think it's only going to continue to dominate people's attention. And I mean, I've said before, the second that they do the super Earth missions, because there's going to be a time when the automatons push in and start invading super Earth, because it has the liberated percentage as well, suggesting you can fight there. And so once they do like a season update or something and everybody starts fighting on super Earth, I think you're just going to see player numbers continue to spike. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that anything else at this point would take like multiplayer game of the year. It's just been crazy, the response to it, especially on PC.
Yeah,
So,
I'm kind of like looking at other games that still have to come out, but I think you're right. Probably it would be kind of yeah. Maybe it is in that game of the year conversation as well. I can totally see that.
yeah, people.
Um,
Somebody on stream the other day, they were like, "But it's a multiplayer game. Games can't win game of the year." I mean, Overwatch won in I think
yeah, yeah.
2016. I think it was
15,
or 15. Was it 20? I thought Witcher 3 was 2015.
Oh, maybe you're right. 2016 then. Yeah, you're probably right.
So I mean, it can happen. It's just pretty rare. But I mean, Overwatch took over the world.
Yeah, 2016.
Um, and I mean, this is doing very, very well. So it's going to be interesting. A game of the year this year is going to be really weird because I still have a gut feeling that we're going to see a good number of games that have not really been discussed a whole lot so far. Maybe shadow dropped, not fully shadow dropped, like coming out in 3 months, that type of thing, revealed this summer. I think Star Wars
April
Outlaws.
and May are gonna be exciting, and that's also leads us into the next story. We have the date for Summer Game Fest. June 7th is when Jeff Keighley will take the stage, and he will do an invite only media and influencer event after that. So basically mini E3 for people going there. But yeah, it has not reached the same heights. But basically the games that he will show on stage will then also be playable in some form or have presentations. To give you an indication, like a reminder or refresh actually, last year we saw the Prince of Persia game, The Lost Crown, revealed. Sonic Superstars as well was a new game, and it also featured the first gameplay for Alan Wake 2, Mortal Kombat 1, which of course is kind of a big deal, and kind of a surprising one, we saw the Spider-Man 2 release date there. And they ended with a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer. So they had some pretty big games for like the second half of the year. So I totally think we will probably see Black Myth Wukong here. Like that's coming in August, at least right now. I can still see that being pushed, but right now, August 20th or 21st. So yeah, I totally expect a trailer for that. The Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 game will probably see a new trailer. It was last year at the show as well. So yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. Like it feels like this year feels kind of weird, where next week will be crazy, but after that we only know about a handful of games, and like you said, there are still probably some big hitters that we don't know about, and I'm sure we will hear about those in April and May. That's usually how it goes, that they get their own spot, and then they will reveal more during Summer Game Fest.
Yeah.
One of them will very likely be Assassin's Creed Red, of course, and I still think Borderlands 4. We will see.
Star Wars Outlaws.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So could be a big year for Ubisoft. I mean, Skull and Bones, I know already. It's like, how do you top that? But we shall.
The quadruple A game.
How do you top that? A quintuple A game?
I sometimes look at the Reddit for Skull and Bones. It's so funny.
I did just get an email. They're like,
are like, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
What is going on? I mean, there's still allegedly people playing it, and like, you know what? If you're one of the 50 people that really like it, go for it. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited that at least something's happening this summer. I'm very thankful I got to go to an E3 before they shut down. Technically the last one, but it's just E3 was always a bit of a dinosaur. It was struggling in a modern age because it was initially built for media to meet with game developers and publishers and have meetings. It was like an industry event, and then
Oh,
they
even before that was for retailers. Like, really, what are we gonna put on the shelf
yeah, I remember like
during the holiday?
back in like the back in the early 2000s, Todd Howard was talking about the early days of Bethesda Game Studios and how, the video game section at E3 used to be in like a tent outside in the parking lot next to the tent for porn. Like it was not taken super serious. It wasn't like a total video game focused event, and then it sort of morphed into that. But it eventually, these big publishers just realized, why would we pay E3 to do an event when we could just do our own and not pay E3 anything? It just makes more sense, and we have more control. We can dominate the whole space. Everything is about us. So they just started doing that. And at that point, once Sony and Xbox and Ubisoft, once they all started to pull out, E3 was left relying on smaller indie games that people weren't that interested in going to Los Angeles to see and try. So everything just started to kind of implode, and they tried to save it by introducing like the like street pass, which was just for anybody, a fan pass basically. If you wanted to go in and you weren't media or industry, you could still go and attend. But then media got pissed at that because they're like, yeah, so now the wait times for each demo is like 15 hours. You can play maybe
No, it
one
was.
demo a day.
I mean, usually the media would not stand in line for these things, anyways. But it would mostly be that the halls were just so crowded. So
Mm.
usually these appointments are back to back. So you're expected like from 12 to 12:30 at publisher X, and then have to run to the other hall because your other appointment starts at 12:30 at like Sega, for example. So, and then usually you could like easily get there because there were not a lot of people. And now with like all the fans who are not on the same schedule, like they're just chilling, it's kind of hard to make all these appointments.
Well, and like
So that
I
was
had
kind
a
of an issue.
thing when I went that was right before Marvel's Avengers was going to launch. So like Square Enix had a little demo thing set up there, and you could technically go. My understanding was you could technically go and schedule a slot to go. But when we got our slot assigned, we still had to wait in line for like an hour and a half
Oh, damn.
until like it all fed through because they started running behind because of technical issues. So it like the whole thing just got really, really rough. And I still remember how toxic it was, everybody, for the Cyberpunk 2077 line, because this was summer of 2019. Cyberpunk was at like peak hype. And so the line was already always booked, and it kind of wrapped around the big display building that they had built. And the entrance to the line was right next to the Mortal Kombat X maybe display and play area that they had, but nobody waiting there wanted to play Mortal Kombat. Everybody wanted into the Cyberpunk line. So there would just be dozens and dozens and dozens of people huddled around this little walkway blocking the Mortal Kombat booth. And so the Mortal Kombat guys were super pissed off the whole time because everybody was preventing others from walking through and seeing their booth. So they were always
Yeah.
being mean to the Cyberpunk fans, and it was very toxic. It was very toxic.
Oh my god, that doesn't sound great now.
Yeah. So anyway, it was kind of bound to happen, unfortunately. I still think there's a place for it, but the only way it would work is if the big publishers agreed to come together for one time a year and huddle up and kind of share their games across the floor from each other. And I don't know if they'll ever do that again, unfortunately.
I mean, last year I think Ubisoft still had a sort of event at like a different venue because the sort of thing about this is that try and get everyone to go to LA. Like, only the Summer Game Fest, for like, it depends kind of on the games, but like for content creators like us, it's not like, depends kind of on your channel, but it's not really worth it for the expenses. But if there's also a Ubisoft thing, if there's also an EA Dragon Age thing, if there's also Borderlands 4 that you can play for the first time, I'm just saying random things, then that is of course for us already a way better deal. So it makes sense for everyone to get together. The only downside is that you will overshadow each other because for one, everyone only has a limited amount of time, and everyone will then be dropping trailers or everything at the same time. So I'm like, maybe maybe it's smarter to just have the event at the same time, and then be like, okay, this is going to be our embargo day. Let's get together and decide, okay, you won't have your Monster Hunter embargo when where we're gonna reveal the new Horizon game. Like
Yeah.
that would be kind of nice. But
Yeah.
we will see. In-person events are just different. It's needed. Also, I love the sort of presentations where everyone is like cheering and stuff. For the God of War reveal when
Oh,
Kratos
yeah.
stepped out of the shadow, like stuff like that. We do miss that.
And at like BlizzCon, the like, is this an out of date April Fool's joke? Memeable
Oh, yeah.
moments like that can't happen. Or like, you're breathtaking. You know, that only happens at in-person events. I don't think that was technically E3. I think that was technically at the Xbox event, which was separate. But still, in-person events.
It was during E3. I was in the.
Wasn't it? Like, it was during the
there.
week of E3, but I think it was
No, it was, like,
technically
the
at
day
Xbox's thing.
Yeah, they had the
Xbox event.
Microsoft Theater.
Yeah. Because that was 2019. Because I remember we went on stage and stood like where Keanu stood, and it was like sacred holy ground. People were going and standing and taking pictures of their feet because they're like,
no,
he stood here. It was like that cringy.
God.
Anyway, so yeah, are you gonna try to go to Summer's Game Fest or Summer Games Fest this year?
It really depends for me on if there is something exclusive for Assassin's Creed Red. Like last year, I could go, or actually, I had like an invitation to see Mirage, for example, but that turned out to be just an extended demo from what they showed at the Ubisoft Forward event. So they of course showed the first gameplay with one way to do one of these side contracts, and then at the event you could still not play, but you could see a developer play that section in a different way, so you could kind of get an idea. Oh, there are multiple ways to approach it. But that was it. And I was like, okay, to fly out for only that. I did not know that at first, but I knew I could not play. So then you always kind of know, okay, I probably won't get new B-roll. It's not worth it. So it really depends for me on if it's something that I can't get otherwise. Last year also was kind of crowded. We had Jedi Survivor at the end of May, Final Fantasy 16 a few weeks after that. So that's also where like I will be gone for a full week and not be able to work on those games. While this year it seems possible. Like we have the Elden Ring DLC on June 21st. So that's like, yeah, there's some time in between that, and there's nothing really happening in May for as far as we know. So I hope so. I never hear anything from the from those play days though that Jeff Keighley is doing. So
yeah.
I don't know.
We'll
And
see.
you?
I don't know. I would like to go. For me, it's much less of a commitment than for you. I mean, for me, it's not that big of a travel or a trip to go. But for you, I mean, it's the other side of the planet, basically. So it's kind of a big thing. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It would be really cool for us to be able to like meet up, and we could do an episode of Free Roam live in person. That could be crazy.
Yeah, we'll finally have a different microphone. I think people will be excited about it.
Dude, people have been roasting. Okay, I realized if I said people have been roasting your microphone, that might be a pun because they said it looked like a carrot. But you know what? I like his microphone, everyone. I tried using one of those microphones. Like, I think it was right around the time Elden Ring launched.
Oh, really?
I had a big boom arm just outside of the frame. So my thought was I could set it here, and then there's no microphone in my face. It's always capturing my audio. It's going to be great, right? But the problem was it was such a nice microphone that it picked up everything. Like if I shifted in my seat, it was like your ear was against my butt. And if I typed on my keyboard, you could hear my fingers drifting across the key. Like it was too good. It didn't work for the setting of what we wanted to do. So it just wasn't meant to be.
I get that.
Yeah.
What I really like about it is that if there's like a sort of if people are working next door, like changing their kitchen or whatever and making a lot of noise, the microphone won't pick that up. Like it's only like pointing to my mouth, and that's all that it will pick up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the pro from it.
That is a reason to use those. The Shure is, I think it's technically a dynamic as well. With a cardioid pattern. I have the RE20 in there, which is also a dynamic microphone, and those are really good for ignoring extenuous sounds. But That's a topic for another show for sure. But yeah, a wonderful, wonderful carrot. Okay, Mia. Luke loves Jor's carrot. I do like his carrot microphone. You need that extra word. Okay. Beyond this, let's see. We should probably touch on and blast through these real quick.
Yeah.
A new Ghost Recon game. Give us the breakdown here, Mr. Joel Raptor.
Yeah, so we of course know after Breakpoint that Ubisoft has to do something with the franchise. Like, it's still super big. Wildlands was enormous, but Breakpoint kind of shit the bed, of course. And no surprise, they're making a new one, but they're kind of doing things differently. So for one, it's aimed to release in their financial year 2026. So that would be between April 2025 and March 2026. And we've said it multiple times on this podcast, but 2025 will be insane. Like, in terms of it's gonna get crazy. So maybe this Ghost Recon game will be there as well. Although I can see like an early 2026 might be smarter for them, because otherwise you're near Call of Duty and all that sort of stuff. Because they're going back to a first-person perspective. Yes, they're ditching the third person, and I know people are kind of mixed on it. I see a lot of people are like, "Damn, I kind of like the third-person perspective." But I think I prefer the third person perspective as well, but I do think it will really create this sort of new feel for the series. So, or like, of course they had it in the past, but it's been a while. And it should be set during the Naaman War in a hostile southeast country that has seen hundreds of thousands of people die as a result of war crimes. And we, as the Ghost, infiltrate that war zone and have to carry out secret missions and locate a traitor. And they also talk about this Inside the Gaming article that has the scoop on it, that they will have some controversial sections. In the Modern Warfare series, we, of course, in 2 had the, what was it, No Russia mission? Was it called that? That, of course, had a lot of people talking. Seems like Ghost Recon won't be afraid to kind of blur some lines of like, is this okay? They will kind of check some do some interesting things like that as well. And it should have like a huge graphical improvement. Obviously, it won't be on PS4 and Xbox One, and it should be compared, or like, if you want to know what it will probably look like, there's this game Ready or Not, launched in December last year, and that looks pretty awesome. I never heard about this game before, but I looked at some gameplay, and yeah, that's like a very solid looking game. So basically, they're trying something different, but it will still, of course, be the squad based, probably with AI companions. I don't think they're gonna make the same mistake of not launching with AI companions again. But yeah, through the first person perspective, Luke, is this the right move?
I can appreciate that Ubisoft is willing to shake things up. They're doing something similar with like Far Cry 7 reportedly, with the in-game timer and stuff. So they're not just doing the same thing over and over again, which is something they're often accused of, is just kind of treading water. So I can appreciate that. I think it's, there's no mystery what the inspirations are. They're obviously trying to take a lot of nods, as Insider Gaming mentions, from Ready or Not, Squad, Battlefield, games like that. Maybe even Tarkov, potentially. So I can understand what they're trying to do, and they're trying to take nods from those because lots of people like those games. So if you're going to have inspiration, sure, take it from the most successful games currently out there in these genres. I think expectations are conflicted, though, right now, because the last one had such a horrific launch and was such a mess. So they're really going to need to do some winning over and convince a lot of people that they're not going to have the same issues over again, which is why I agree. Like, maybe you announce it in like the summer and you wait till the following spring to launch it. Really affirm to people that you're taking your time and releasing it when it's ready.
I mean, they're already doing it, because Wildlands came out in early 2017 and Breakpoint in the end of 2019. Like, they really were way too fast with that game.
Yeah. And now it seems like they're really taking their time, which is good.
Yeah.
I mean, the Insider Gaming specifically mentions that they got gameplay footage that they're not, of course, allowed to show. That was the agreement they made with their source. But they said that it showed significant graphical improvement to make it akin to Ready or Not. So it seems like they're at least trying to make some big leaps and make this feel like a generational step forward, which is awesome. Something I felt that hasn't really been done by a lot of third-party big publishers. All these games kind of blend together from last gen to this gen. So that's cool to see. I think the gameplay will be when we can tell. Like, the third person thing I'm willing to sacrifice if what we get from the first person thing is a much more grounded, gritty, and immersive Ghost Recon style game. But if it's just still kind of cartoony, or if it's still overly lighthearted, then I don't think it works. But it seems like they're trying to make it very clear, and the leaks are suggesting that they're going for something much darker and grittier and more serious, which I think is the way it works. And in that case, I think first person is probably the right choice, because I don't think a game like Ready or Not really works as well if it's third person. So I'm not mad about it, but they got to follow through on this promise of it being like a darker and grittier.
I am afraid though, like we know Battlefield is coming back as well. Will that be next year too? Like that's gonna be hard to compete with that. You will have a Call of Duty game, of course. I think the first person shooter space is just way more crowded. And I think even if you have The Division, it's a completely different game, obviously. So, and you already have Rainbow Six, which is kind of similar, obviously more PvP focused. But I would argue try a Bring the Terrorist Hunt back or something like that for Rainbow Six. Not the alien stuff, but like do that. And then, because there are just not a lot of third person shooters, open world games like Ghost Recon was. So I think it's bold, I think, to kind of compete more with those other games. But if it's, yeah, I mean, they can pull it off, but it does mean that they're probably focusing on a different type of person instead of, yeah, the people they had with Wildlands in particular.
Yeah. I mean, everybody is, I think keeping a third person would be the safe choice. But then, you get people that are like, okay, so it's just going to be Breakpoint again.
So, probably.
Trying something different, at least, I can appreciate that. Similar things are being said about Far Cry. People are always like, do something different. Far Cry 6 is just Far Cry 5 in a different setting with Gustavo Fring basically as a bad guy, as a dictator. Like, do something really different and crazy. And so then we get these leaks saying that they are, and they're going to try something notably different for this next Ghost Recon game. They're going for something darker and grittier, first person, like kind of really shaking it up. Far Cry, they're going with like a timed thing, trying to make it more immersive.
Different though, like the whole perspective. I see we see that with Indiana Jones as well. People are like, why not make it third person? I like those games more. I do really think that people I mean, it did not hurt Cyberpunk that much, but that game of course also had a lot of people saying I want the third person mode for it. So I'm not sure how much. Yeah, but if it's really stopping people from buying it, but I do think that it helps. But yeah, I agree. You can see it from both angles, and maybe it's just not for those people that like those older Ghost Recon games.
At this point, I'm not convinced that there's a sizable enough number to really matter that will be avoiding a game because it's first person over third. Like if you really liked Ghost Recon and then you hear that this one's first person, I just don't think there's that many people out there that are so opposed to first person games. There are people out there who like get motion sick in first person games. I'm somebody that gets motion sick in certain first person games. And so that is a disqualifying thing for me sometimes. But then for others, there's just as many players that don't like third person games and will be like, no, I'm good. I like the first person immersive thing. So I think it largely cancels itself out, and it seems to be a vocal minority more than anything. So I know it's different, and I know it might be jarring for Ghost Recon fans that spent hundreds of hours in the previous games, but to me, I wouldn't count this out yet. I think wait to see it, because a move like this usually comes with a lot of cascading effects and changes in tone, changes in mission design, changes in presentation of a story if there is one, or of different quests and quest design and missions and things. So I would not dismiss it out of hand just yet. I know some people are very upset about this, but I think it's certainly shocker. It's not even been revealed yet. I think it's too early to tell if this is something to actually be upset about.
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah, we will see when we see the game.
Hopefully soon, maybe not. And then I guess the last thing we should touch on is a little fun update, because we can't have anything nice, which is the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. Now, I have a little saga with this, because I got my hands on the game ahead of launch. They sent me an early access code, and I wasn't able to play the online because it wasn't online yet, because it hadn't launched. So I tried the single player stuff, and the single player stuff is like a trip down nostalgia lane. It's solid, no issues, ran super well for me at like 600 plus frames a second. Really happy with it. Just a good nostalgic trip. I loved it. And then they launched the online. Now, they knew how many people had pre-ordered. They knew how many people were interested in this. And they chose to only prepare for the Battlefront 1 game 3 servers on Steam with a capacity of 64 players each for launch, which means that at max, at launch, the game could only handle 192 players. Otherwise, you just couldn't matchmake. You just couldn't get in. And even then, if you did get in, all sorts of like rubber banding, server issues galore. Like, it was super, super broken. Now, within 12 hours or so, they added a bunch of servers. So now there were enough servers. The quality of the servers is all over the place. Still tons of rubber banding, all of this. So I made a follow-up video showcasing the online stuff now that it had launched and being like, oh, baby, it's pretty rough. The other thing that got people upset was that this version of the game is like 60, 70, 80 gigabytes, depending on your platform. All tangled up in my wire. And the original games are like, I think, what, 6 gigs, maybe? Like, the original games you can still buy on Steam are way, way smaller. And everybody's like, what the hell happened? How is this game so much bigger when it's just 2 of the same games from before? How does this make any sense at all? My understanding is that it's how it's packaged. Somebody explained it on Twitter as it's basically like if you have say you're running a sandwich shop, you know, one of those where you go up and you're like, ooh, I'd like some onions, I'd like some tomato, I'd like some cheese, I like this, and you go through that. The game engine basically sorts things into sections and bins. And so if you are in this part of the game and it's pulling this asset, for example, it can save time and memory and space by copying that ingredient from this area of the kitchen over to this area. So now you have 2 bins of tomatoes, but it saves time because this is closer to where you're working when you're over here. And so you end up with duplicates of different things scattered around the kitchen because it ends up actually speeding things up since you don't have to move all the way. And that's basically how it works with some game engines when they package games, where they'll duplicate textures or duplicate assets to different areas of the game's broader like folder trees, because it ends up being faster for everything. Does that justify it being so much bigger? Probably not for most people, especially if it's only saving like a few seconds of loading before you go into a match. But my understanding is that's why it's so significantly bigger. Either way, it just seems to be another example of short-sightedness with a live service launch. I think people playing the single player stuff or split screen are still gonna have a great time with it. Don't get it twisted. Like, that stuff still works great and is a really good time. But if you were hoping that this was going to just be like Battlefront 2 from 2017, I think it was, but now, you know, it's the OG version. No, it's not. It's it's kind of a mess right now.
It's good that they are not doing the Old Republic remake. Maybe we now figured out why, because that's, of course, yeah, they were doing that as well, Aspire Media.
Yeah. And then it got moved to Saber, which are the same guys doing Space Marine 2. So that's good. They at least seem to know what they're doing. So yeah, bit of a train wreck, but you know, this is what happens when you can have a single player mode that looks awesome, and you're like, okay, so this is going to be really good. And then you get the online launch and you are like, oh, that's a wreck. Ooh, baby. And then it looks horrible in comparison, but that's just what happens. It's what happens when you can't test a mode before
This
launch.
could have been such a slam dunk.
Could have been.
Yeah.
The single player stuff is a slam dunk. I think it's great. And improved in a lot of ways, but a lot of the reason people were going to buy this was so that they could play the online stuff with their friends in like a modern context, and it apparently just does not really work. Some people were saying that they've run into a lot of like graphical issues. They've run into textures glitching out and turning like neon green and stuff. In my documentation it emphasized updating graphics drivers. Otherwise stuff like that could happen. So potentially that's the problem people are having, is they didn't update their drivers. Either way, that probably shouldn't happen.
The modes or like the matches are very short because you only have like 100 kills.
Yeah, basically like the OG matches were set around like 100 or 150 deaths basically before the battle is lost. And that worked when you had 32 players on a side, because like, okay, it balances out roughly to like maybe like a 5-10 minute match. But when you take it to 64 players, that means that everybody can get one kill. I think on average, like probably 1.5 kills on average, or 2 kills, a little less than 2 kills on average. And then the match is over. So inevitably what happens is you have one guy with like 35 kills. Everybody else has 1 or 0. And it just doesn't feel that great. It's just a huge oversight. I think you can go in and manually change the rules of the matches, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back in and check in the menus.
I saw a comment, I think, under your video. It was like, did the devs play their game? Like,
yeah, it's just like
maybe not with 120 people. Maybe
I think that's exactly what it was. They just were like, okay, so this seems cool. We crank this knob. Booyah. There we go. I don't know. It is genuinely mind numbing that they did not think to have more than 192 people capable of playing the game at launch. That's such a, like they had to choose how many servers to have, and they chose 3 for launch. Like, what? How does that make any sense at all?
They must have any numbers or anything.
Well, and 10,000 people, according to SteamDB, tried to log in at launch. So they knew they had at least 10,000 orders because they had pre-downloaded the game. So 10,000 pre-orders, basically. And if you say, I don't know how many people are going to be trying to play the game right the moment it launches, but I would guess probably like minimum 10% if they cared so much to pre-order it. And that's 1,000 people. So like, how on earth did you think only 200 would be interested? It's just baffling, but it's going to be tough for them to shake this now. The game has, extremely negative reviews on Steam now as a result, and it's going to take
2
a lot
out of
to
10.
shake it. Yeah, and it's pretty much all just because the server issues. The rest of the package can be great, but if the server issues prevent people from enjoying the online component, they consider the game broken. So
it's RIP.
Yeah. Rip Rooney. But if you still like the single player stuff is great. Recommend that. But if you want to play it for online, you will be very sad. But anyway, any closing thoughts? Any other final topics we should go through before we part for the week?
I think we discussed everything quite in depth as well, so that's very nice. And I think good luck to you with the crazy week next week. And
it's going to be mad.
Quite busy.
Yeah.
And then the week after that, we have nothing again for the next couple of months.
Yeah, hopefully we can just sit around talking for a couple of weeks about how great Rise of the Ronin and Dragon's Dogma are.
Yeah, that would be great.
And then, we'll do a bunch of videos on how amazing Alone in the Dark is and how much of a sleeper hit it was. Yeah, maybe. Probably not, but maybe.
We will see.
We'll see. I'm hoping
and then, I'm mostly curious about the reveals. Like, will Wonder Woman come out this year? Probably not, but like something like that, where it's like, oh, that we have that as well. I want to be surprised like that.
Yeah, me too. I feel like we're primed for a couple big surprises.
Yeah.
And I wonder if some of these studios that put like 2024 on their calendar were like waiting for a couple of big announcements for release dates. maybe they were
I mean, they
waiting
can still
for,
announce it without the release date and just say 2024, like Indiana
yeah.
Jones, for example. So
It might have been just that, if you're in that 6 month period from like October to March, this coming October to March, maybe a lot of these studios were just like, we just want to make sure we're not releasing the same rough period as GTA 6 or as, whatever other game, Elden Ring's DLC, whatever they were worried about. And so they just kind of
yeah,
cautiously wait. And also, I think we're coming out of a period of a lot of games launching really broken. And there's probably a lot of pressure on teams to be accurate with their release dates and the current state of their games. Because one thing that was revealed in those Phil Spencer emails that came out as a result of the FTC stuff is that with Redfall, that came as a surprise because he felt that the teams were not honest with him and his team about the current state of their games. He felt that teams were overly optimistic. Teams were telling him the game's in really good shape right now. We can wrap this up in time. And so
if
he's
he
like,
would have just
stress
played it
honesty.
for 10 minutes.
But that's the thing is like, we've both been to like maybe preview events or we've tried demos of games or something, months in advance. And it's got a lot of problems, a lot of issues, but the developers can stress to you, this is something we're aware of. It's fixed in the current builds, or
Oh,
this is
sure.
going to be
Yeah, yeah,
fixed. And so you kind of can only go with what you're told. And if you're deceived, or if they were just honestly mistaken.
yeah, but yeah,
Like like Cyberpunk 2077, I think that they almost certainly were just like telling media, oh yeah, if you see these bugs in your reviews, most of these, we're
oh
working
no,
on.
I think the stories there were that everyone knew that it was in this shape. I mean, that's why they hold the review codes and did the weird thing, right? That's
Oh,
they
I mean
really
like in the like 6 month period, because they did that
oh,
one
like the
round of
E3
demos. Yeah.
reveal. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think like that, it's by the time the game launches in 6 months, most of this will be, ironed out. If not all of it will be ironed out, because that's what we're doing right now. We're polishing. And a lot of media is going to take them at their word, because who are you to call them a liar? But then, and maybe they weren't lying. Maybe they just were honestly mistaken. But in the case of Phil Spencer, with all these games that launched one after another that had technical issues for Xbox, I think they were like, okay, well, we just need to be very honest with ourselves. And I think that's probably happening in a lot of other studios and publishers where they are just like, be real. Do you need more time? I think that's what happened with Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2 was supposed to launch like this past fall, and it got delayed to late this year, like over a year, most likely.
September, yeah.
When all is said and done. So like, I think there's a lot of pressure on polish right now, and that's a great thing because it means we're going to get games that are actually finished, and hopefully teams are being given enough time without crunch to sort through that. But
And still everything released on March 22nd.
and still everything launches. Yeah, everything comes out at the same time. We'll see. Yeah. Oh yeah. R. Daniel. Oliva. Let's see. Have you seen the Tim Sweeney email to Gaben about 30% Steam fees, calling it BS? Yeah. Well, specifically, there was a slight misquote in a lot of reporting about that email, because I know exactly what you're talking about. I had it bookmarked. For anybody not familiar, we can just mention this real quick before we depart. This was an email. Tim Sweeney emailed Gabe Newell calling Valve, "You a-holes," over Steam policies, which was basically, right now you a-holes are telling the world that the strong and powerful get special terms while 30% is for the little people. So basically Tim Sweeney emailing executives at Valve being like, you guys are cutting special percentage deals for the big AAA games, letting them make more off of each copy. But the little guys who need more on each copy, you're charging the full 30%. That seems kind of scummy. And the viral tweets reported as the Valve COO replying, "You mad, bro?" But he didn't actually do that. You can actually see who he sent it to. He sent it to other executives within Valve. So it's like forwarding it to your friends and coworkers. He didn't reply to Tim Sweeney going, "You mad, bro?" He replied and he like forwarded it to his boss and was like, "Look how mad this guy is," But he didn't actually reply to Tim Sweeney saying, "You mad, bro?" But it is still very, very funny. And I mean, it's crazy to be in the spot where I agree with Tim Sweeney. But I think he's right. It is kind of scummy that the little guys who could use 80% or 90% off each copy, much more than like EA or Ubisoft or whoever else. I think it's scummy to force them to only get 70% when you're making special deals with the big guys. But this is what happens when you run the shop.
Yeah,
You get
they
to call the
need
shots.
Steam and they know it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's why
The issue was that people were like big games were going to Epic, and that's what they wanted to counter. So that's why they lowered the percentage.
Yeah.
For multi-millions.
But running those shops, when the shops are good, I mean, that we looked on stream on Wednesday at the top gaming companies in 2022 because the numbers weren't tallied for 2023. Do you know what the number 3 company in all of gaming was? This is weirdly specific, I know, but it was like
Apple?
10. I think it was Tencent and then PlayStation. And number 3 was
Apple
from the App Store, taking 30% off everything. And then like number 6 was the Google Play Store because of their 30% cut off of every microtransaction. So it just goes to show you, like, if you run the house and you are taking a little cut of everything, it adds up real quick. It really does.
Yeah, they didn't even make a game themselves. That's crazy.
Yeah, and yet they're printing money. It's outrageous. So
all those Genshin Impacts, those Candy Crush moms spamming,
dude,
Farmville or whatever
so
people are
bad,
playing
dude.
these days.
People are, and it's crazy because I'm still surprised that it's legal in a lot of cases because it clearly is built. All of these games are built around appealing to whales, which are people that spend inordinate amounts of money on mobile games. And it's because they usually almost always have gambling addiction problems. And so that's why gacha games are so popular and make so much money, because it appeals to that little bit of the brain loop that loves the little open the pack, maybe I got something good, and you end up with people that spend.
I mean, they spend more money and these artists spend more time on the visual sort of firework effect when you open a box than some of the other things in the game. Like that probably goes to many iterations to get the thing that they want. I would not be surprised if they like have people come in with sort of like a thing on their head so they can measure everything, like their eyes and their emotions, to see which effect works the best.
Yeah, I took a marketing class in college, and it was tied around like color schemes and fonts to use to evoke certain emotions. And it's crazy. Like, there is sort of a science to it where it's like, okay, this color and this shade of yellow tends to evoke this type of emotion in people. So when we combine it with these colors and these sound effects, we can achieve this type of reaction in people. And it's like, it might not work for you, but it does work for still millions of people. And so every time you do the little Candy Crush and you get the crunchy sound that's super satisfying, and then the little pop and explosion of color, and then you see the numbers, drift up to the counter. All of that is super precisely designed to give you a little dopamine.
I mean, and on one hand, it's like, I mean, that I do always think, gaming sometimes gets a bad rep for it because we kind of like, there are a lot of like good cases, but if you go to the supermarket, the music they select there is also to give you that relaxed feel, and that that might end up that you spend more money than you were probably supposed to or wanted to in the first place. So everywhere you go, there are things like that.
It's like here in the States we have a hardware store, and then we could wrap this up. This is a tangent, but we have a hardware store called Ace Hardware, and you go in there for if you need to buy a shovel or nails or whatever else to fix up your house. But one of the things with Ace Hardware is that they almost all of them have popcorn machines inside them, even though they're just a hardware store. But I remember reading an article in one of our local newspapers that did an analysis of it, and apparently they did the math. People ended up staying for significantly longer and spending more money when they were able to come in, get a tiny little bag of popcorn to munch on while they walked through the store and shopped, because they didn't want to bring it in their car. So they'd finish the whole thing, and then they're shopping, grabbing like, I guess I could buy another paint can. I don't really need it, but I'll use it eventually. And it actually makes a difference. So all these little bitty things, they matter. Or like the example I've used before for like the little micro manipulation was when I worked at Best Buy. We had cables for certain like a HDMI cable for TV. And we had ones in boxes, and then some were in plastic bags with a label on it. and they were the same exact cable, just in a different packaging, but they had different UPC codes, and they'd be in different parts of the store. So they might have the cable, the exact same cable by the checkout register for $15, but back in the home theater section, it's only $12. So just based on where you grabbed it, it would cost more because they might take advantage of you being at checkout and not wanting to walk all the way back to check to see if there's another generic brand to get. So they know that they can get you for that extra bit of money. All of this is like super, super precise. It's crazy. It's so funny. But anyway.
And it really shows that we are easily manipulated, even though we think we're not.
Yeah, and a lot of people are okay with it. Like the people that spend all that money on Candy Crush or WWE Champions or whatever, those types know they have a problem. They know they shouldn't be spending this money on it, but they can't stop, or they're okay with it if they have enough like disposable income. They're just like, well, it makes me happy, gives me a little dopamine, so it's just what I do. I just budget for it. And at that point, like, I guess I can't be that mad if you're aware that you're making a stupid decision. Like, at least you're aware. Can't be that mad.
Yeah.
Like, I drink a lot of coffee. Do I need to drink coffee? No. So I can't. I shouldn't, but I do because it makes me happy. Yeah. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks.
You all are wonderful. I want to say thank you to Slow Ram for subbing with Prime over on Twitch, and also Ongo Gablog. Thank you for subbing with Prime over on Twitch as well. I appreciate every single one of you. You guys are fantastic. I love you all dearly.
Thanks for joining.
Yes, and next week's show we should have plenty to talk about.
Oh yeah.
So we'll look forward to that.
Big games, some things,
some big things to talk about. I'm excited. We're so coy and secretive. Okay, much love, everybody. We'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.
Bye.